Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's Facebook Live. Today I'm going to be talking about the top 3 mistakes you make when using low-carb sweeteners and how to fix them. I'm Libby and I'm the founder of ditchthecarbs.com. I'm a pharmacist, a health coach and a mother of 3, and I'm here to answer all of your questions. So let's get cracking. Rightio, lovely to see some people hopping on. You know, I always love you to tell me where are you watching from and what time is it for you guys. So today we're going to go through the top 3 mistakes you're making when using low carb sweeteners and how to fix them. So mistake number 1 that I see all the time, and this is where I get complaints about, oh, your recipe was a bit too bitter or it wasn't quite sweet enough for me, is the number 1 mistake is using too much stevia. Now you would think that too much stevia would make a recipe too sweet, but actually it does the opposite. It actually makes it too bitter. Using stevia is great. I personally don't get on with stevia particularly well. I know a lot of people do and they absolutely love it, and that's great. Find a sweetener that works for you. But because stevia is 300 to 400 times sweeter than sugar, it always has to be diluted with something. So say, for example, I'm just going to show you some things here. You can either get them as bottles at drops like these. You can, here I don't use it. It's still full of stevia. So you can get them as drops that are diluted, or you can get them as packets that are diluted with erythritol. If they're very, very easy to overdose your sweetener. So say, for example, if you overdose and you give far too much sweetener, it won't give you that extra sweet taste. What it does is it gives you that bitter metallic aftertaste, and it's really nasty. And I know a lot of people say, oh, your brownies didn't work, they weren't sweet enough. And I question them a little bit further and I go, well, what sweetener did you use? And they go, oh, I use my favorite stevia. And I go, did you add too much? Because as you can imagine, using a dropper bottle, because it's so concentrated, if you give even a few extra drops or maybe half, you give a whole squeeze and you give far too much, that gives it the bitter metallic aftertaste. So that's the mistake number 1. Mistake number 2 I see with low carb sweeteners is not tasting before you bake. So somebody would maybe make a cake or a brownie recipe or a chocolate cake recipe or a cheesecake recipe, and they don't taste it before they bake it, and then afterwards they go, oh, that wasn't sweet enough for me. And I always say the amount of sweetener I use in my recipes is the amount that I would use, and most people who've lived low carb for quite some time would use, but we're all on different parts of our low carb journey. So if it's day 1 for you, you might require 2 or 3 times the amount of sweetener that I would use, and that's fine. Don't feel bad that you need that. But as time goes on, you will require less and less sweetener, and until some people don't use any sweetener, a little bit step too far for me, but some people don't, other people require half the amount. So say, for example, my grain-free granola. I have a recipe which uses sweetener. Some people use double. I now no longer use sweetener in my granola, but all of my other baking I do. So it's just kind of a bit of tasting it before you're baking it, because you don't want an expensive baking mistake and expensive low carb mistakes. We don't want that. All here about saving you guys money when you're coming to low carb. So that's the biggest thing. Also, there's another little top tip, so this might be tip number 4. If you have some baking and maybe you haven't sweetened it enough, you can always resurrect it. You can always rescue it. Don't throw it in the bin. So you can serve it with maybe sweetened whipped cream. You can maybe serve it with just a few little berries and some sweetener, or just some pouring cream, put some sweetener in there, anything to add that sweetness back in. But like I say, the longer you live low carb, the easier it will become and the less sweetener you require. So tip number 3 is not reading the labels. If I tell you this once, I tell you a million times, become a label reading ninja. It's boring, but it works. And once you discover the brand that you love, stick with that brand. So I'll just show you some examples here. I like to use a sweetener that measures spoon for spoon in place of sugar. So I'm not sponsored by any company. I think I'm the only blogger on the planet that is not sponsored and refuses sponsorship. So what I'm showing you is what I genuinely use. So say, for example, if you're in New Zealand and Australia, that's what I tend to buy, and it measures spoon for spoon in place of sugar. And if you're in the States and a rest around the world, Swerve is the next one. that also measures spoon for spoon in place of sugar. So both of those ones are pretty much my favorite go-to sweeteners because it's very easy to replicate. It's very easy to use instead of sugar. But, and say if I was going to convert a cake that maybe would require 2 cups of sugar, there is no way on the planet I would use 2 cups of those because my sweet tooth is diminished. Because I find anything sweet really quite sweet now, I would only maybe use half of a regular mixture in sweetener kind of conversion. But generally they measure spoon for spoon. But the biggest mistake I see people make is people don't read the label that they've got because every brand will vary differently. So they measure spoon for spoon. This one, for example, is double strength. So if you required, say, 2 tablespoons of sweetener, you only require 1 tablespoon of this. And the same goes for stevia. Like I've got these different brands. One will say, I don't know, one is 5 drops per teaspoon of sugar, and one will say one is 20 drops per teaspoon of sugar. And so that would be the number 3 mistake I would see, is people don't read the labels and they don't know what concentration of the sweetener to use for swapping it out instead of sugar. So find a brand that you love, find a brand that tastes how you expect it to taste, find a brand where you know the concentration. I love the ones that measure just 1 for 1 in place of sugar for sweetener. And like I say, don't over sweeten with stevia. And I always give you something away. So here you go. This is what I'm giving you away today. If you want to get started low carb fast and you've got a clue where to start, I always give you my 5-day meal plan. So this is a 5-day kickstart. It's got a little meal plan for you. It's got some recipes. It's all completely free. It's also got a little pantry guide. It's got a shopping list, and it's even got a progress tracker there for you. So that whole thing is free, and I've got the link above. And when I come off, I'll put it in the comments below. So you can come and grab that and just get started. It also puts you onto my email community. You can unsubscribe at any time. I really, really don't want to be junking up your inbox. That's no fun for anybody. But I do give you sort of weekly tips on how to get back on track, because I know a lot of people at the moment are really finding it hard. So go and join that. So they're the top 3 mistakes you make while using sweeteners. Number 1 is using too much stevia. It will make it too bitter. Number 2 is not testing before baking, because once you bake the cake, you can't put the sweetener back in there. And number 3 is not knowing which brand you've got to know what the label is. You need to read the label to make sure. So I'll quickly see if there's any questions coming in here. Oh, hello, there's Naya, how are you? Carla, hi, Melbourne, Australia. I'll say you came from Insta. Yes, I just come from Instagram. I did my first ever live. I've never done an Instagram live in there. Didn't even know which buttons to press. I just giggled through the whole thing. So thanks, Sam, for hopping over. Louisville from Kentucky, that's lovely. From Pittsburgh, South Carolina. Where are you all watching from? And if you've got any questions, I love this. Oh, you use Pure. I think that's what I've got here. There we go. That's what I've got there. I don't use it at all. It's still full. Oh, Katrina, Auckland, I'd love to see another Kiwi in here. Monk fruit is my favourite. Yeah, monk fruit is, it's hard to get here in New Zealand, but I do order some things from iHerb. So anyone around the world, if you can order from iHerb, and I've got a discount code somewhere on my website, you can go and get that. But I even managed to get free shipping and 10% off here in New Zealand. So that's how I buy the Swerve here in New Zealand. You can't get it here. So I do a big, big order. So that's brilliant. But monk fruit is lovely, lovely. Oh, I'm getting New South Wales. From Melbourne, Australia. I virtually never use sweetener. Yep, if I do, it's a drop or 2 of pure stevia. And that's brilliant. Find out what works for you. UK, 1 o'clock in the morning. Crikey, you're brave to get up this time. And Bev in Canada. That's wonderful to see you all. I love seeing everybody here. So that's what I've done for today. The top 3 mistakes people make with sweeteners. If you want to know more of my top 3 tips, I'm starting a whole new series that every week I'll give you my top 3 tips. They're here on Facebook. They're also, I'm loading them up on YouTube. They'll soon be on my website, and you can get them also in as an email subscriber. So have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, everybody. Let me know below, what's your favorite sweetener? Which is the one that you love to use? Which is the one that you don't like to use? And have you all learnt my big top tip? Don't eat sugar-free and low-carb bars that have maltitol, because it still raises your blood sugar and you don't want that. So that's my last bonus tip for you. Have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, everybody, and I will see you next week. Okay, bye.